Hey, welcome to Horns Up. This is episode number, what? Which episode is it? 17? 18?
Yeah.
17?
17, yeah.
This is episode number 17. I'm Animesh.
And I'm Peter.
And today we are talking Amogh Symphony.
Yeah, man. The mysterious yet, eccentric, if you want to call them.
Yeah, mysterious and eccentric. I think that those would be two good adjectives to use for Amogh Symphony. What's your Amogh Symphony story? When did you first check them out, or how did you chance upon them?
Wow. So for those of you at least who've heard the initial episodes, you all have kind of dated and know how old Animesh and I are.
Yeah.
But I still remember the first time. I'm not sure who exactly linked it to me, or probably it was one of the RSJ or GigPad forums, but someone posted a MySpace link for this band called Amogh Symphony and said, this is some amazing stuff. Does anyone know who this guy is? Because nobody knew who Amogh Symphony, and with a name like Amogh Symphony, it's a bit of a...
Yeah, you know
strange.
It's Indian, but you don't know if it's some foreigner trying to sound Indian.
And you didn't even know if it was one person or three
or
people.
two people or three people or
And then
whatever.
I hit play. And I think for the entire song, I was just like, what the hell is going on? Because this was like hyper sped up death metal riffs with like jazz parts in there. And I was like, okay, is this guy even human?
Yeah, it's very avant-garde when you first checked it out, right?
And this was the album, for those who've heard it, Abolishing the Obsolete System.
Yeah,
That was
with that artwork,
dude.
that woman, no?
Yeah.
It was that woman breathing fire, the tech robot woman breathing fire.
Dude, it was like crazy. And then, figuring out that, okay, this is one guy named Vishal J Singh who's done all of this. And man, it was crazy just to hear it for the first time and realize that, okay, there's a guy who's playing this kind of music. Because if you look back, it's 10 years ago. This was far ahead most Indian bands.
Absolutely.
In all aspects.
Yes. Quick sidebar. Bombay scene question to you, or Bombay scene trivia.
Yeah.
Guess who introduced me to Amogh Symphony by hard selling me a CD?
There can only be one person who does something like that.
Who?
Mr. Ashwin Sharma.
Holy shit, you win 10,000 points. Yes, he hard sold me the CD back when I think, was it Big 69 or was it that place in Borivali which used to host gigs?
Yeah.
I don't know, one of the two things. He sold me
B69,
he sold me Abolishing the Obsolete System, and oh my god, it was like the Matrix meeting metal, but not just metal, avant-garde jazz metal, technical death metal, and it completely blew my mind. The next release, Quantum Hack Code, was even better, I thought. I thought it was a better album.
Oh yeah, storytelling-wise. Now, just to go back a second, for those of you listening to it and haven't heard Abolishing the Obsolete System, this predated Gent. This
Correct.
predated bands like
Chim Spanner, Hydrogent and stuff.
Hydrogent, Animals as Leaders and stuff like that. So hearing this prior to, this sound becoming more mainstream and
or
popular.
More popular,
yeah, it was crazy. But
it was. It was, absolutely.
Quantum Hack Code had a lot going on. I mean, again, I feel this was still ahead with its storytelling. So you had every alternate track, which was an intro and stuff like that, which I think had like polarizing reviews because they also released a version without the intros.
Yeah.
What was your take on that album?
I as I said, I enjoyed Quantum Hack Code more than I did Abolishing. And I think I liked it because I'm a huge sucker for concept albums as such overall. Yeah. And I like listening to like one CD in entirety or so, one album in entirety. So the album overall had more of, or it clamored for more attention, or it actually forced me to listen to it far more deeply than Abolishing did.
And of course, this is prior to like streaming and singles and stuff
like that.
Of course,
so you are listening to CDs in entirety. Yeah. Right? You only carry one CD with you or two CDs with you at tops if you want variety in your day's music. But yeah, I remember wearing that CD out so much. So I actually asked Ashwin Sharma, I think, for another copy, which I still don't have.
I think I can get you one.
It's okay. I have the MP3s now. I think. Okay. Since we are speaking about this in the iTunes demise week, I would catalog all my things very well, and so I still have those MP3s.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyways, the days of Winamp. Kicking your llama's ass. Anyways, we digress too much. Let's bring it back to Amogh Symphony. Of course, after that is when I remember after Quantum Hack Code is when the world began to take notice of Vishal J Singh.
Yeah.
And like the forums and everything else, MySpace, etc., were rife with just discussion about who this guy is and why this guy may be the next frontier for the Indian music scene overall. Like he became heralded as the guy who could do no wrong, right? And then after that, we hear Vector Scan.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure like this is so. I've known Vishal and been in touch with him for years, and I quote him post the release of Vector Scan. He's like, people are gonna hate it. Everyone who's heard the previous stuff is just gonna hate it, and
yeah, it was a very left field release after setting up the expectation once you've heard Quantum as well as Abolishing.
Yeah, and I think with the release of their latest dual release, double album, 4, Part 1 and Part 2, if you listen to this and then go back to Vector Scan, I think it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, completely agreed with you, because I think now Amogh Symphony is finally, what's the word I'm trying to find? Is finally, like, he was always supremely confident, but I think now he doesn't care about the world accepting him.
Yeah. And he's reached a stage where he's like, this is what I'm doing, this is my music.
And
that's
it. That's the best way for an artist, and I'm doing air quotes again, which obviously people can't see because it's an audio podcast, but he is an artist.
Yeah.
And Amogh Symphony is his art project.
Yeah.
That's how I would classify it.
And I think that's a great way of putting it also. I don't know if it's the ideal thing from a listener point of view.
Yeah.
But as somebody who's followed their discography for a while, I mean, come on. If you're expecting like an Iron Maiden or a Judas Priest, then, an AC/DC, for example.
Exactly. So I think there's a distinction here. There is a commercial band.
Yeah.
And there is a non-commercial project. And both of them have the right to make fantastic music, whether it be for commercial reasons or not. But one can clearly classify Amogh Symphony as a non-commercial project in my head.
I don't think Vishal would disagree with you also, because the way he's looking at it, or the way he's making the music, and this goes back to even our last episode where we were talking to Daniel Tompkins, where he talked about the music and music being a release for you. And I'm noticing more of a trend with bands artists that I listen to, where for them music is more of a release or something they need to do, as opposed to, okay, I need to put in this album
because I'm contractually obligated by a
I need to tour
it.
over it.
Yeah, those were the old days.
Yeah. And I think this is probably a result of the newer age of record labels, the music industry being more democratic in a way.
I think it's also to do with technology being so easily available now than it was in the past. I mean, you are completely... There's no boundaries of... come on, we are doing this in a room with a Zoom H4n recorder with 2 cheap mics plugged into them.
Yeah.
Right? Who would have thought, like, even 10 years ago that we'd be able to do this?
No, true.
Right?
True.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, so let's get it back on track. Amogh Symphony is out with, as you said, a double album. The first part was...
Both parts.
The first part was, I think, released 7th May, and the second part was released 21st May.
Yeah.
You can check them out, of course. And what we also recommend that you guys do is you log on to amoghsymphony.org, okay, which is the website for Amogh Symphony. And before diving into the album, just read through the lovely, exhaustive as fuck liner notes or FAQs that Vishal's put up.
And I think it adds a lot of context to the album in there.
Completely, it does. It fundamentally, to a lay person, it explains or kind of helps you understand where Vishal is. And I'm sorry, I know Amogh Symphony is a multi-people band, but to me, it's Vishal's band.
Yeah, and we'll get together into so. The main difference I see in this album versus their previous releases, I mean, of course, Vector Scan and was two of them on drums, and you had Vishal. But this time you've got four very distinct personalities there. So you've got Tom, Andre, Derek, and Vishal. And I'm not going to give too much away, but I'm seeing them coming into their own as a band, possibly very soon.
Yeah, but I think the driving force behind this still remains Vishal, right? So, anyways, not to discount the other members in it at all. Okay, yeah. So, coming back to that, amoghsymphony.org. Please go up. Please read everything before you continue with this podcast. And before you continue with this podcast, also check out both the albums. Now, let's quickly discuss the album.
Sure.
Yeah. What did you make of 4?
Part 1, part 2, I mean, I can understand why they've separated them into 2 parts. Each part has like a part of a mix of their own with instrumental. Now, this is the first time also they've introduced like distinct vocal parts. Vishal singing, you have his mom also in there and stuff like that. So that's a bit of things.
And so many samples.
Yeah.
Across both parts.
Yeah. I mean, man, there's so much going on. So
it is, it takes a lot from you to keep listening to it. It's not something that you can put on in the background. Yeah. The closest mainstream release I would relate to this in this year would be Empath.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like if you were to give Vishal the kind of money that Devin put on Empath, I don't know what Vishal would make, because
dude,
I think Amogh Symphony would probably make the most what's the word, eclectic, not just eclectic, but the most confounding, if that could be a word to describe it.
Dude, I'm now that you're saying it, I'm just trying to think of all those choir parts on Empath, put it in an Amogh Symphony album. Because I know there's a brass band on here in the Amogh Symphony. So I'm just looking quickly through the track list. Straight up, if you listen to most of the songs, the one that really stands out on the first part for me is Everything Is Now in the Eye of the Sun. That's the more like single one. It has like that haunting, catchy chorusy part. But yeah, man, there's a lot going on in there.
I ended up enjoying the second part more than I did the first.
Yeah, and I think that's why they've separated it in a way. Yeah. So there's going to be people who are instantly going to like one part more than the other. And if you had it as an entire album, it would just be quite an exhaustive listen.
In the 2 parts, it already is. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's so much going on that you need to force yourself to keep revisiting parts just to wrap your heads around that.
And just going back to our conversation earlier about technology and stuff, imagine with the limitations of, say, your cassette or your CD, which you had, which was 90 or 80 minutes, you wanted to make as
the
an
most
independent. So you'd like record till like the last 78th, 79th minute, or fill as much as you can. Or with the cassette, you'd like distinctly have 2 parts in there, side A, side B and stuff. With technology like this, since this is primarily a digital release now, you can easily do this. And it's so much more different. And it's the consumer at the end of the day. Now, unfortunately, when the day of streaming where people are more into singles.
Yeah.
But coming back to part 2, what was your favorite track of part 2?
The first track, the Cats one, that completely got me by surprise, because I wasn't... I mean, the title of the track itself, which is...
Cat Scan in Narnia.
Yeah. That title itself throws you for a curveball, and then when that opening section kicks in and you hear the meow, I mean, it's like an inside joke or something, but I'm probably sure there's a lot more to it than just that. But that was a treat to listen to. The final track, which has that lovely Assamese vocals on it, folk songs on it, that's beautiful. Overall, so here's my take on the entire album. Overall, I feel that this is more of a personal record.
True.
I completely will say that this is an exploration of craft. Okay, this is essentially an artist trying to push his boundaries and see where he can push them to, increase his limits. And with that as the context, you begin to enjoy the album a lot more. To a casual listener, this won't be an easy listen, and neither will it be something that everybody will gravitate towards.
But I think that's with a lot of metal in general. I mean, of course, unless you pick your certain artists and things like that. If you look back at the artists that we initially enjoyed and stuff like that with metal, the reason why we listen to those artists or we enjoy those artists and say 10 other people don't, that there's a alluring factor to it, or there's something that has attracted us.
Of course. What I'm trying to say is this accessible music? No, it's not. And so, if it's not accessible, automatically the number of people who listen to it will come down.
Yeah.
But even to those number of people, it'll take time for them to actually digest this or enjoy this.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that this is a bad album or a bad listen or not a rich experience, because it definitely is a rich experience. It's just an acquired taste.
And it's quite an immersive experience.
It is like and it's best heard on headphones.
Yeah.
You need to just wrap yourself and cocoon yourself in that sound.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is not an album you can like listen to while working or kind of doing
or
other
while
chores
working out or something of that sort. You need to pay attention to this because that's the best way to enjoy it. So, I think we agree on that.
True. Yeah? Completely.
Wow. So we've spoken about Amogh Symphony for quite a bit. We've kind of reviewed or just opined upon both parts 1 and 2, which leaves us with an interview, which this time, Peter, you're doing solo. And I apologize for not being able to join you on that day. And Vishal, I know you're listening to this, so my apologies. I hope to catch up with you at some other time. I just couldn't be there for various other reasons. But Peter, you went all the way up to Thane to record this.
Yeah, man. Agreed, it was a Sunday and it was kind of easier to reach there than most parts of Bombay. But it was quite nice to catch up with Vishal after a while. Even though we've been in touch online and WhatsApp and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
It was good to finally catch up in person, speak about a lot of things, but most importantly, speak about 4. So let's dive in and listen to that interview then.
Yep, let's do that. I'm excited to listen to it. Here is Vishal J Singh from Amogh Symphony in conversation with Horns Up's Trendcrusher.
So we're here at Studio 604 in Thane. Got my good friend Vishal J Singh here. Welcome to Horns Up, Vishal.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, I'm glad we could finally sit down and get a chance to do this.
It's been a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, I appreciate you taking out the time also, man.
I have to, especially when Peter is here. I mean, you're one of the few closest friends who actually listen to my music since quite a long time.
Yeah, and actually we'll get into the history a little bit, but just to warm things up a little bit, your 4th album, long awaited, I must add, and at least the first part has been released. So how does it feel, man?
Feels like, actually I'm feeling very relieved.
Okay.
Because, that the first stage is writing of all the songs, Then the second stage, producing, finalizing structures. And then the third stage, you wait for the release thing, which is quite a stressful, and it's like sometimes, even though it's completely your own baby, and you want it to be heard, but somewhere deep inside you get that feel, are people gonna like it or not? It happens at least once.
Yeah.
So that feel was there, but it came out feeling much relieved, and my bandmates are quite happy because they were supposed to kill me if I'm not. They're like, I've been warned by my bandmates like 3 times, if you're not releasing this album this year, we are actually thinking of hiring someone to kill you.
We'll get more into that, but on the podcast and in previous episodes, what we've done is talked about just how our past guests have got into music, metal specifically. So let's start off with, what was it like growing up for you? Like, I know that you've come from a musical family. So what was the kind of music that was playing growing up? How is it really?
I started music at a very early age, about 5 or 6 years old, but I started as a listener.
Okay.
And initially, when I discovered music, I think I discovered at my late grandmother's house, where she used to teach different instruments, piano, Western classical, jazz, traditional Assamese songs, and then like another room, my uncle, he's a flamenco Spanish style guitar player, so he's teaching all other styles of music. And we have another uncle who is a percussionist, and this is very distracting. I think we need to stop. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Can we stop?
So we're sticking to Amogh, huh?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So Vishal, tell me about. So you come from a musical family. What was it like growing up? What was the kind of music you were listening to?
Earlier, I listened to a lot of music. It was not just rock and roll. A lot of Western classical, a lot of Hindustani classical, also a lot of Spanish music, but mostly a lot of folk music.
Okay.
And then my brother introduced me to like heavy metal.
Right.
And that was, I think I was like around 10, 11 years old.
Oh. And what was it like? I mean, what is the first album, if I can ask?
Yes, it was it was this cassette called Guns N' Roses, that the band was called Guns N' Roses. Of course, everyone knows. The album was Spaghetti Incident.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And strangely, I think all of them are covers, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So covers played by a glam rock band, but in a very different style. So that, I think, that was something that I really liked.
Dude, I still remember, I must add this. I still remember listening to Spaghetti Incident, and I'm a huge Guns N' Roses fan. And I was like, okay, what's going on this album? Who are these guys, man? These are not the guys who wrote Appetite for Destruction and stuff like that. And then I look it up and realize it's covers. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, so basically you're getting the point. The first metal album, I would say metal because that was very heavy for me. And I just realized that these are cover songs. These are not their original songs. And after that, my brother's best friend, he asked me like, what all bands do you listen to? And and I was like, I think Guns N' Roses is my favorite band. I was very young that time.
Yeah.
He says, that is not metal, bro. Okay, then what is metal? Then he made me listen to Sepultura.
Oh, wow.
And Sepultura, then he made me listen to some other bands. I think, Iron Maiden.
Wow.
Metallica. Did not like Metallica at all at first, but I loved Iron Maiden so much. So much that it actually inspired me to learn the Iron Maiden songs on drums.
Wow.
So the first album was, I think, again, it was a very underrated album, X Factor.
Wow. Okay. So now this is the thing. A lot of people that we've interviewed in the past talk about their shared love most of the musicians, Metallica, Iron Maiden. But I think you're the first person that has come on the show saying they liked X Factor. So I'm very curious to know why.
I know, right? So when I actually listened to X Factor, I was very attracted to the whole, I think, the song arrangement. It was very different for me. The time signature changes, the many changes, and I thought that's what the sound of Iron Maiden is. But then I listened to the other albums, and I felt like those albums were a little outdated.
Okay.
And it was, a moment where I just felt like maybe they wanted to change their songwriting, their style or something. Then I was reading about the reviews in RSJ and other magazines. No, I think Rock Street Journal was the only Indian magazine at that time.
Rock Street Journal.
Yes.
And, Animesh and I have pledged our love and talked so much about it on the show. But yeah, man, props to Amit
we used to travel to a different town to buy that magazine. I still remember that.
Man, I think Rock Street Journal was the internet for us back in the day. And,
yes, actually.
That's the only way you'd read about what's happening in the Indian scene, international scene also. There was no internet back then,
true. Rock Street Journal was very responsible for the popularity about the local bands because I discovered, and plus they used to come up with compilation cassettes.
Yeah.
It was very amazing because there was no other medium to discover these bands. And when I heard Millennium,
dude. Millennium, the early stuff.
Then I heard Moksha.
Wow. Again,
I was like, wow, we have such amazing bands in India. I mean, of course, I've seen bands in Northeast, but listening to these bands, it was a different experience. So it was a mix of everything. As in, I listened to a lot of Indian artists. Plus, I've listened to a lot of...
Who's your first Indian, other than Millennium and Moksha, the first Indian band that really had an impact in you?
It was actually a solo artist. That was Trilok Gurtu.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I was actually listening to, by that time, I think I turned 13 or something, I was listening to a lot of Led Zeppelin. John Bonham was one of my biggest influence as a drummer. And... my dad was saying that Led Zeppelin is a great band, but John Bonham is also an amazing drummer. You should listen to Trilok Gurtu. I was like, okay, let me hear it. And when I heard it, I was I think it was the album called Crazy Saints.
Okay.
It was released in 1992. If I'm not wrong. I was totally blown away by his time signatures, the way he plays the drums. It sounded like it doesn't sound like a drummer would play something like this. So I was very inspired, and I was like, it's like you have a book of mathematics, and you are very curious to solve each and every problem. Yeah. So for me, Trilok's album Crazy Saints was like that. I want to know what exactly he played, how he played, what are the techniques he used. So that motivated me to spend a lot of time on the drums. And similarly, I discovered other guitar players. So, that's how usually I started listening. So it was a mix of jazz, metal, folk music, all types of, music. So it's, I never stopped listening to, bands as in from different genres.
Sure.
Because I wanted to make sure that if I'm listening to a particular song, suppose if it's a jazz song, say there was a song by Miles Davis, and there's a particular section in that song which I really like, but I started, fantasizing in my head, what if this section comes after a very heavy breakdown?
I'm not going to... I know where you're going with this. And I'm sure a lot of people who've been listening to Amogh Symphony lately kind of getting the genesis of where these ideas are coming from. But we'll hold on to those thoughts for a couple minutes more. Okay. I know you've established kind of that drums was the first instrument you picked up.
That's
Am I
right.
correct?
That's right.
How many instruments do you play at the moment?
I don't really... At this point, after years of playing, I don't really consider myself as a proper instrumentalist. I would love to add that, because I think I'm a very horrible drummer, a very horrible guitar player, a very horrible bassist, a very horrible keyboard player, Yeah.
But you still manage. I mean, for those who are listening to this and have just heard what Vishal said, he's the guy that played the drums on the new Amogh Symphony album. But we'll hold that for a few minutes more. But yeah, man, have you taken music lessons?
Initially, at beginning, no, honestly.
Okay.
So it was all ear training. I think I would say my first training was that initially 4 or 5 years I only listened to music. That really helped me to understand a lot of things. And it started with me visiting my grandmother's house and finding a soft spot, a common soft spot, I could say, where I can hear all the different, because there's one room where my grandma is teaching instrument to some kids. There's another room in the house where one of my uncles is teaching guitar. There's another room, another uncle is teaching percussions. So I found a spot in the house. It's a big house, right? So I could hear all these instruments together, and they sound like something else. Because
this sounds like, I don't know, musical paradise to me. Right?
So it sounded very different to me. That was my introduction to music. That was something that I loved. It, that first love,
Yeah.
So from then, from that moment onwards, I've discovered my love for bringing different elements into the music. So then I realized that I have to start listening to more music to find out, to know what all things happened in the past.
Okay.
So that at least I can try to create something else.
But so I'm not going to ask you the most obvious question is, did you know you wanted to have a band then? But so no formal music lessons at all?
No, absolutely not.
Wow.
But later on, my dad helped a little bit.
Okay.
And my mom, she also helped. I studied the theory, but very, very much later.
All right.
Initial 3-4 years, even my parents, my grandma, my uncles also said, let him learn by his own.
All right.
Because my uncle, he's a very renowned music composer in Assam and eldest brother of my mom. So he told me that you have to find your own sound, and this is your time for 5 years. We will see, because automatically at some point of time you will stop. And from that moment onwards, you will need the basics. So then we will teach you what music theory is all about.
Wow.
So that's how it started.
Yeah, man. Shout out to your uncle for all that influence he had in your early life, man.
Yes.
Because that sounds like a very different perspective for most musician families, where it's like, you learn the piano. No, you learn this instrument.
No. So my uncle, I'm very thankful to my uncle, even my dad. So my dad was more into the intelligent side of songwriting.
Okay.
So the whole experimental thing actually came from my dad. But the whole musical, that feel, emotion perspective, the entire existence of emotions in music, that part came from my mom and from my uncle. Wow. Because they are like completely into music. Although my dad was also a musician, but he was more into science and technology. He was like a nerd guy. So,
It sounds like I can see where, the early seeds of Amogh Symphony was set, all the thing. But yeah, man, that's great to hear this. But any embarrassing recordings of your early bands that we might surface, or anything that you've been trying to remove from the internet? Tell us about the early bands that were there, that you were part of.
Yeah, actually, my first band, it was called Touch and Tune.
Where was this?
This was a very long time back, man. I think it was 98 or something.
But where was it?
This was in Assam.
Okay.
Assam. So my cousin, she was the vocalist. And there was one guitar player, bass player. We used to play only covers mostly. You know, Bee Gees, Santana, and ABBA. So it was good. Initially, it was all good. But then, I'm talking about 98, 99. So, all the Indian bands, they used to play a lot of covers.
Yeah.
I mean, there were any band who, worked on their originals. Except for a few bands, of course.
Yeah.
So, I was very bored of that whole thing, that why do we have to play covers only? And even if we have to play covers, why can't we use include our own ideas and make the covers a little interesting. And then it's like, because I was very young and non-experienced, so I used to hear these words like, no, you can't play like this. It's a cover, so you have to respect the artist. You have to play exactly how the song is. And I was like, nah. So that was, for me, the good advantage was that I learned a lot of songs, and I start observing the song arrangement, how different it is to play a song in a studio, write a song and performing the same song on stage. So the difference you can figure out. There's always a difference on that. So it really helped me that way. But I think after that, I really wanted to play in a band who are like very heavy, because I was slowly getting into metal. And I think.
So wait, did you have a new metal phase?
Yeah, totally. That was
Limp Bizkit.
Yes,
Linkin
with spikes.
Park.
I had spike hair. Yes, spiked hair.
Are there embarrassing photos of you on the internet?
My God, I don't even want anyone to see that. We had a photo shoot, in Pune. Pune was the city when I started playing metal.
Right.
And my first band, that was my second band. So it was called Infinite Ashes.
Okay.
Vedant Kaushik, famous vocalist who now sings for Third Sovereign.
Yeah.
So he used to be the vocalist in that band, and I was in Bangalore, and I was supposed to become a doctor.
Wow.
First year MBBS. Yeah. I don't know what kind of doctor I could be, but yeah, that's what happened. So I got a call from Vedant. He called me from Pune and said, "Bro, we formed the band." By the way, Vedant, all the band members from that band are from the same hometown.
Okay.
So Vedant called me over phone and says, "Bro, we formed at first he said we formed a thrash metal band, and we need a drummer." So I said, "Yeah, good, all the best. No, we want you as the drummer." And I felt like, "Whoa, really? You want me to play? Like, what kind of songs?" He says, "We're gonna play, Slipknot, Lamb of God." And then I was like, "Okay, are we going to play any originals?" He says, "Yes, we do have originals." "Okay, so we want your help to write down the songs, compose the songs. Are you interested to join the band?" I said, Totally, but you're studying MBBS." "What? What is MBBS?"
Right.
Says, "Will you be able to travel from Bangalore to Pune?" I says, "If you can help me out with finding a place to stay in Pune, I'll just leave Bangalore immediately now."
Wow.
So he said, "Okay, you're going to stay with me." And then I asked my brother about this is the situation. He says, "Okay, go ahead."
Wow.
"What about mom and dad?" I said, "We'll take care of the situation later. First you go do your stuff that you want to do." Because I did not want to become a doctor.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And we packed the drum kit, went to Pune, started playing, started writing a lot of songs, small jam rooms, sweaty jam rooms. And my drum kit was very big. So finding a jam room where I can fit my drum kit was the biggest problem. And, disturbed, angry neighbors complaining, all that things happened in Pune. We did a couple of shows, actually many shows we've done. Response was pretty good. We played a lot of originals, a lot of new metal covers. And again, I left the band after I think 8 months. I left the band because I felt like the songwriting, the whole vision of the band was very lost. It was just for me it's very almost impossible to work with people, musicians or any creative artist who lives with that mentality that the kind of music I make or I listen to is the topmost, and any other style of music is just like crap. Yeah. So that I find a little disturbing because that for me it stops me from growing.
Fair enough.
And that was the problem with the band. And they just wanted to stick to playing nu metal, and the originals were just copy paste kind of stuff. And I was stopped from being, the composer also. So, I think we had a long argument, and I think it was Vedant's birthday. I hope he's not listening. So it was his birthday, and there's another band called Black Hole Theory was there.
Yeah,
used to be one of the
of course. Naveen
yes,
was the
Naveen
drummer
Deshpande,
back then,
who's the mixtape's owner now.
Yeah.
So we had this birthday party celebration, and I got drunk. Actually, we all got drunk, and we had a big fight.
Okay.
I think that was the last time I saw this guys.
So now that you're talking about this, and I kind of see where the genesis or the seeds for Amogh Symphony were kind of set in your childhood. What kind of stemmed? I mean, of course, you come from this bad band experience where you were held back and stuff. So at what point did you decide to start Amogh Symphony? Or were you already thinking of Amogh Symphony back then?
Yeah, so I started writing the songs from a very early stage before I joined any band.
Okay.
So I used to record some basic ideas. I had this Zoom 1010 guitar processor. I think they stopped manufacturing this long time back. And then I always imagine how would it sound when I play these songs with an entire band. And I tried these songs with all the bands which I was a part of. Unfortunately, it did not work out because I think maybe people were not ready for that.
Okay.
And maybe because it was a little too different for their taste.
Yeah.
And it was just lying there, but I never stopped making those ideas, recording those ideas. So I kept recording and kept writing, and like from sometimes in between the jam, I just show some of these riffs, guitar riffs, and all this drum beat patterns to my bandmates. And they're like, yeah, it sounds great, man, but way too complicated. I don't think we can play this live. I said, no, I just played it right in front of you.
But it's interesting that you bring that point because I still remember, so I lived in Dubai at this time.
Right.
And I was just kind of getting into or discovering the Indian metal scene and, figuring out the different bands are there. And I know you know where I'm coming from because you have this big smile in your face because it's been 10 years since abolishing the obsolete system. And I still remember the first time I heard the album, or I can't remember which single for the life of me because it's been that long. But my reaction was no different from your bandmates at that time. But I was like, is this an actual guy playing this? And, of course, this was a time where you had a lot of people being trolls online or, stealing stuff or taking gigpad.com and RSJ. So I was partly convinced that it could be a real person. I was partly convinced that, it's some guy trolling everyone. There's no way someone can actually play it. So, yeah. And I still remember being amazed. And then slowly there were other friends of mine who were into the Indian scene who were like, hey, dude, have you heard this Amogh Symphony guy? Who the hell is he? Because no one really knew. And I think this was the time pre-social media also.
Yeah.
I think Facebook also wasn't around.
No. It was I uploaded the entire album on MySpace.com.
Yeah, I still remember. The MySpace was the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you listening and don't remember MySpace, man, you missed out.
Yes.
But
Good old days.
Good old days. And that's where you kind of discovered bands. So just tell me, what was it like recording that album? I mean, I can't believe it's been over a decade since then. What are your memories of that?
Wow, actually a lot of memories. When I actually almost finished writing the songs, I mean, not produce, of course. When I finished the songs, I think by that time I already came to Bombay.
Okay.
And I was studying audio engineering.
Right.
Under the guidance of Mujib Dadakar sir, and then Daman Sood. These are all top engineers at that time. Also, I wanted to experiment with song music production and the whole aspect of DAW and recording technology. And I had no other music to record except for my own songs. I also wanted to make a band, get them to the studio and record the entire thing, but just calculated the entire costing first which was like
back then.
Yes, and hiring a studio for recording at that time, like I'm talking about 2008, 2009, was literally impossible. And then I talked to many musicians, top musicians in Bombay. So it's like, all like good musicians are still amazing musicians. When I spoke to one of the drummers who was known to be one of the top till date, top jazz drummers in Bombay. So when I asked him, like, would you like to play the drums in these songs? So he was very honest. He told me that, look, I'm very comfortable with the jazz parts, but the metal sections are impossible for me to play. So you need to find someone who can play both the styles. Then I found another drummer who used to be one of the top death metal drummers. I think you know him.
Probably.
Yeah. He worked with Trilok.
Okay.
So at that time he was totally into extreme death metal, and he was probably the only drummer in Bombay who could pull up like 200 plus BPM hyperblast.
Okay. Yeah.
And I asked him, and he said, I can play all the metal sections, but the jazz sections are impossible for me to play. Then I met guitar players, asked them, would you like to play the guitar parts? They said, no, bro, I can play the metal sections. This is super complicated jazz for me. Then I asked an electronics artist, and who was actually a DJ. I asked him, would you like to produce the electronic section? He says, I don't know how to compose this kind of electronic sections, especially in a song like this. This is jazz, this is metal. What would you call it? I don't know. So I don't have a vision for this. I cannot help you. Then in the end, I just realized that, this is not going anywhere. I would record it myself, playing all the instruments. And that's how it just happened. I just begged my senior, Mr. Sood, that, sir, please give me the studio for 2 days. Let me record it.
Hang on. You recorded the entire album in 2 days?
Yes.
Wow.
So it was all me doing multi-takes and stuff. And I had to, because I got the studio for free.
Yeah.
And so all the rest job, whatever editing, mix, post work, was mixing, mastering, was done at my friend's studio.
Okay.
That was a different part, because I could not get the studio for that.
Fair enough.
And I had no money to, invest on it. So I recorded everything, and I was actually a little, what would you call, unhappy with the fact that I came to Bombay with the hope that I'll find better musicians, but that did not work out. So, and everybody's like, you need musicians to record an album. Why would you play everything by yourself? You're not an expert. You need better musicians, better instrumentalists to play these songs. And I was totally against